Hi, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Happy New Year going out to all the empowered harmonizers, hoping and wishing you a beautiful and blessed day and a happy, prosperous, and really progressive and fun-filled and joyous New Year. We are zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth on sort of getting a handle on it all, of really sort of getting on track. Getting some structure that isn't too rigid, isn't too loose, but really is just right, especially when it comes through working with handling and dealing relationships that are significant in nature and perhaps are causing you some difficulty, some unhappiness, some sadness, some anxiety, and an undergird and certain underlying current of fear, sort of confusion and a lot of obligation and guilt that sort of muddies the waters, and it makes it very difficult to navigate through successful waters to where is the good life, where is the promised land, where is it meant to be for me. I know it's out there somewhere, that great beyond, sort of that expansiveness where you feel kind of like the child again that knows their way in the playground, where everything is just okay. When we talk about healing through these difficult relationships that oftentimes are marked or demarked by sort of broken boundaries, impaired boundaries, where there might be on one side of the relationship sort of some aloofness, some disdain, a need to criticize, manipulate, or deceive, or have really issues with pathological lying behavior. Not just a little white lie, whatever. We're talking about significant things like I paid the mortgage and it isn't paid. I did this and this for their college and it was never done. I will be loyal to you, and you find out that they have a slew of affairs. You think that they're doing one thing and it is directly contrary and really causing you an adverse experience, meaning there's a lot of suffering and pain. And if this is in a family system or a marriage where there are children, we're kind of sort of going back a little bit more in depth on the experience of co-parenting with a covert narcissist, someone who maybe has not been a good role model. So if we're talking about in this situation, like for a father, a male figure here, a gentleman who really did not step up to the plate in terms of maybe their parenting requirements or requisites, did not attend, lead, guide, show, and teach. One of the important aspects, especially if we just sort of look at and understand covert narcissists and their look at parenting, oftentimes they sort of have a lot of reasons to take themselves off the hook. This is unenjoyable. This is taking too much away from my and then usually if it's a career or pursuit, a hobby, something that has to do with their need for achievement. So there's a primal need that they have that will take them away from responsibility. Just like they need to do something, this can be very primal. And the narcissist oftentimes doesn't feel that they need to explain or justify. They feel that they set the rules and everyone should follow unquestioningly, even if there's exploitation or hurt involved through lack of that presence. So it's not oftentimes what they do, it's what they do not do. So if you are encountering this, co-parenting, for once again, if the male figure is sort of not really showing up, they're not really a stand-up, they're maybe involved in affairs, or they're not really present. They might have substance abuse where they're drinking or drugging, so they're not really thinking clearly. And oftentimes even their speech can be impaired. And kids pick up on this. They pick up on the enunciation. They pick up on the percussiveness. They are aware of when their parents are okay to provide and when this is endangered. So it becomes very much like a pecking order. And especially with young boys, I think there is a jockeying for order. Just as like you would have a birth order. So usually the firstborn likes to be the leader, the authority, the the leader, and then the younger, of course, is the baby who gets away. Usually the firstborn has it tougher. They, strict rules and what have you. And then, the baby gets coddled. We've talked about that. We're not really talking about that in depth. And then the middle gets sort of the brunt of it all. So if there is this triangulation in a family system where there's pitting against one side against another, children will play this until the cows come home. They will skip to the tulips. This is their way to sort of not have to deal with the consequences of being disciplined, particularly that of delaying gratification. When we talk about teenagers, their growth spurts, their hormones, their voice changing, their need to sort of identify and click with a good role model that is male, and that also includes male-based relationships, so they get what it is through experiences and relationships, what it is to be a good guy, that can then be a friend, that can play on the baseball, football, that can have a girlfriend, get an apartment. So healthy relationships are important, but when there's a covert narcissist who is aloof, who has a weak spot, in other words, they're just not showing up, they don't feel that it's their responsibility. A child will, especially a male, really want to set the record straight about whose mound or whose turf or who is the boss cow, so to speak. and that pecking order where they sort of test their strengths, it becomes, I would say, almost like a fencing match. And some male father and son relationships are better or different than others, but either way there is this thing which is bonding, which around the sports, the fishing, the repairing, learning tools, learning how to ride a bike, coach on your team, these sort of involvements where a son learns to trust, grab hold of their parent's leg, feel okay and comfortable in them, and understand what it is to earn admiration, earn respect, earn recognition, and earn that sort of positive identity that's defined upon a positive I am. Meaning, I am confident. I can, so in other words, I can go to the mall and get some baseball hats. I can learn how to ride a bike and have fun and navigate a job, and all the benefits that I look forward to from that as their teenagers sort of growing into their newly matured selves. If this is not sort of minted with a role model, or there's a role model deficit, oftentimes children will act out and then work against themselves. They think that they're all and mighty by running the roost, breaking the rules, letting you know who can do what when. So this is sort of a typical for the teenage years, but it's going to be even more rigid and more difficult to navigate than even this tough part of raising a child. Namely, when it talks about looking forward and dealing with a narcissist relationship, realize that there is a lot of juxtapositioning. So me against you, mine and theirs, red and blue. So they're going to want to, like, you say zig, they're going to want to zag. You say zag, they're going to want to zig. So how do you sort of get into troubled waters and get that one little sliver, that one little open door of some calm light that says, hey, reckless youth, you wayward son, look at this light. Perhaps you could be a great boy. You have this great future. This is drawing you forward. So how do you as a parent sort of dangle that little lantern and keep them out of sort of muddying the waters when there's a covert parent? Because if there is not that solid role model, I would say especially for the men, they don't learn how to be a man or what that means. So what is the value there? And then how do you, how does that then play out in one's life? How do you know your role? How do you then lead, in a dance? How do you then ask out for a date? How do you apply for a job? How do you straighten up your tie? Comb over your hair? All these different things. So if they don't have a role model to connect with, like, I want to be like dad, or if they have some sort of admiration that they can see in their parents, so something that is sacred in the people who brought them here, there's, that is the parental and child bond. So it's like your legacy, your history, your ancestry, their tough stories. You learn a little bit about your roots. That's your identity. And especially now, you have to have a strong root. Otherwise, you're kind of like tumbleweeds rolling through the Wyoming Badlands. It's just kind of like they're just going to be bopping along through whichever way the wind goes, and you're not going to feel very comfortable as a parent just seeing this or feeling this. It's a very terrifying, out of control feeling, especially they eat 2 loaves of bread, and then the next day they're 4 inches taller than you, or wider, or whatever it is. They've got a new voice or a new value or mindset or app, and you're definitely not feeling included in the convo, whatever, and so it's very difficult then to sort of meet. I mean, these are some of the most raging waters I think you will find, especially if you're observing this. So I would say getting back to understanding that very core relationship. A mentor is needed. A role model is needed. Something who that child can gravitate to, not just a fantasy figure like a Spider-Man, or with all the video games that they might be influenced by. When we talk about understanding and unraveling the triangulation, which is really one of the most unstable, not only shapes in nature, it's one of the most energetic, but also it's very much of a power play that will pit people one against the other. And a covert narcissist, if they don't have that checks and balances, then there's going to be this sort of chaos. So structure needs to occur. A structure, I would say, not that is impositional, meaning like I'm trying to shape the beast, because if you look at the relationship like this is a beast, you have to realize that there's a lot of positivity underneath all that malady. It's really all the malady and acting out is just saying, I need more information. But I don't know how to ask for it. I don't know where to go to. You really have to back up as a parent, I would say, and stop looking and feeling that maybe bias or personal nature. I'm a terrible this, I did that. I mean, all that sort of really continues to inflict wound and troubled waters between. So you really, really need to come at it from another shore, another perspective, another boots, another stance on things, another angle from where you have been coming, because oftentimes it just accumulates and it's just there is no getting through or having that receptivity of that child, because their anger feels good. It's primal, it's rage, it is exciting. They can floor the car, they can throw this, they can make loud noises. Lord knows they're trying to define themselves. I would say, if you can, when you are dealing with this, and understand, of course, the reframing, understand that even though there's this all sort of unshaped chaos, that this is a future, you can understand that this is a future leader in the making. This is future productivity that just has not been organized as of yet. So you have to understand that and walk in that faith and know that really when you see that acting out, don't say I'm a bad parent, or start looking back and regretting all sorts of things. Realize that these children, they need that positive reinforcement that puts them at the advantage. In other words, knowing who they are best. Like if they're great at basketball, well, you just got the greatest basketball shoes. You might have this and this and this in your bedroom, but your shoes really are that's your thing. And so with children and role models, if there's this break in the family circuitry, this dysfunction, rage, violence, making fun of, all that different things, realize that there is a positive, very strong light and fire within there that you need to sort of tame like a dragon, and realize that all that is really a cry out for help. And you might try different things in different structures, which is all well and good. And some of this does take time to mellow, like a puppy who's just, they're too, spastic for their own good. So, this is the energy that has to be channeled. So yes, and it does, have different things that do need to be managed. They might need a support group. What is, though, the anger all about? If there is this acting out, if there's lying, what is the lying all about? You don't need to act with lying. You can get deep with the children, but coming from a place of strength and realizing taking care of yourself is going to be number one. Taking care of yourself, number one, and getting a new perspective, number two. In other words, we want to do a 180, a 360. If there's been a lot of muddying waters that has just traipsed and traipsed through, in the family, and then all that child is seeing all this muddied waters, this, that, and so what is needed to be sort of given them so they can begin to manage things that they can be responsible for, things that they can make a couple bucks at, something that they can have in a place that's their own, that they can put up their things where no one is disturbing them. It might just be a wall, a door, or something of that nature, but even planning for the future, when we talk about healing and we talk about coming through those hurts, there is that positive role model that even in underneath all the layers of feeling a victim, or the parent is not there to guide them, and this becomes a chronic problem. Realize that there is a male energy in many other areas of life that a young child needs, particularly a role model. If they're physical, is it a athlete? Is it a writer? Is it a musician? Is it a painter? Is it an IT person? Is it Elon Musk? Who do they look up to? And if they don't have one that is positive, learn and discover. Even if it is, seems sort of that they're still rebellious or acting out the hurts that they feel that are done onto them, realize that they're just looking for more information. They just don't communicate it very, very well. This is their objection to life, their rebelliousness. This didn't work. So there is so much for them to be a part of, and I'm not quite sure their age, but looking at where they can really click with other males. Maybe there's a volunteer squad, a volunteer police, a volunteer firefighters. Where are some real strong male role models? You might not want to say, well, we're going to go to the church and you're going to, have an extra Sunday school. Maybe they are not religious that way. Maybe they are. Maybe they relate to Jesus and all that he had gone through, his persecution, and maybe they identify with the cross. Maybe they identify with the Star of David. Maybe they identify with the Aztec Indians. There might be something very positive that on top of it all that they really identify with at this time. So part of the discovery and learning is, what is it positive that one can gravitate onto. And this goes for people as well who have also been on the victimization end, where they have been abandoned, rejected. Okay, rejected, not loved, rejected by their parents, not loved by their parents. This is really one of the most existential big questions that would come into your son's life is, do my parents love me? Does my father love me? I mean, these are the, am I lovable? So this is like some of the first stages. And that autonomy, that once that is known and secure and is not up for question or doubt, then you can begin to go into what I call the positive, orderly direction: thinking, feeling, behaving, and becoming. But there has to be that latch onto that positive role model that doesn't only always lead to hurt. So, for example, if a role model is, let's just say, a rock star who has a sordid past, drugs, negative music, discordant, so, and then that child is just beating into themselves more of the same pain, and they're amplifying it, and that's what they feel. So they feel alive, they feel power, that they can just, so they need to temper it down, literally like tempering, the dragon flame. And it goes with all other people as well who have been victimized. So that inner flame, you need to be able to get a dimmer switch on it, knowing and regulating your emotions and your behavior simultaneously. So you can seamlessly, know what your healthier behavior is and know that it's right for you and that there's a positive outcome, versus just, I'm drowning in the sorrows of what is lacking, particularly that of a role model. And if there's alcohol involved, that sets up a big roadblock, I would say, to the teenage boy, because there's something in between the two of you, and it could be a big bottle that the parent disappears into. And if they're drinking a hard liquor, this has a very different impact than if they're drinking wine or spritzer or whatever different drinks. So that, I mean, there are so many other questions, I'm not quite sure. But if they're really have like a lot of aggression, this really can become a behavior disorder. Therapeutic intervention. How does this happen? Where do they learn then to put together an engine? In other words, where is going to be a healthy outlet for the skills, knowing where they are made, what they are made of. Are they inclined to mechanics? Are they inclined to broadcasting? Are they inclined to writing? Are they, what is their inclination beyond just avoidance or hiding? Because a lot of people, when they're wounded, want to hide. They have then either a social anxiety or feel inadequate. And, if you're just coming into, 15, 16, 16 is a big deal. There's the sweet 16, this is a special age. So, especially if you're wanting to really make this different, the girls would get a sweet 16. What is the sort of coming into, that really, your older teens, each year is very significant. 16 is big, you're preparing to drive, you're getting ready, you're looking about graduating high school, or, getting, sort of into your more in-depth classwork. You're sort of then thinking, how are the next couple of years going to be? So really part of is kind of like fishing for strengths, I would say, at this time, in putting that out in front of them in a very physical, image-like nature. In other words, where they can belong, a membership, you surprise them with a book or a poster or a something that is someone who they really resonate with, so that they can sort of latch onto. Maybe is there another, teacher that they really enjoyed? Can they develop some different outward bound or other male relationships in the community that are maybe volunteer or mentor like in nature, exploring what does the school offer, what is this and this offer, what is available at the community level or the therapeutic level, because oftentimes for at-risk populations, they're going to have some work study groups, so outside of, maybe their regular school, but work experience where they can maybe volunteer a couple hours a day. I know in the when I was working with the insurance, they're the business owners, they'd have maybe 60 employees, and then some of the employees might be from the high school and learning to work on the tool and die machines. So they're getting really hands-on practical experience, something that they know how to do. So I would say looking for opportunities that they can channel. If it's still really rough, it is still really rough. Then we need to still keep at it, and realize that eventually things will grow. But it is a tough time, but it is not impossible. So introducing some things that they might feel that, not spoiling them. In other words, they're a bad kid, they've punched or they've done this, or, they've had some trouble, and you're not going to come at them with a set of Encyclopedia Britannicas, or here's a flight to Vegas. You're not going to do something inappropriate. You want to help to build with where they are at, and something very, very constructive, where but there is not this sort of isolation, like, here's a gift, go and find out your own future by yourself. I'm giving you this freedom. But how can you make introductions to other older people maybe in the school? Is there like a brotherhood program? I know that in many cities there are youth YMCA, YWCA, where they have Big Brother programs. Where is a Big Brother program for your son? And just like people who need that too, you need to sort of have a support system. But I would say, especially if it's a teenager, they need to have, I don't want to say a surrogate, because if they don't, what they do not get at home, they will find elsewhere. If they're not getting parenting guidance and direction from their parents, they will seek it from someone else's parents. They will seek it from somewhere else, and maybe not sources that are going to be fruitful for you and your family's future. So you want to say, okay, wow, well, we've got this sort of wild bonfire like passion here, and it's not, so if you look at reframing, and bad, sad, realize this is very, very sad, very, very hurtful. I don't know if there's many more hurtful things that one encounters than this sort of growing through these teenage years, when there's a difficulty or an impairment in the father-son relationship. Dr. John Bradshaw, The Homecoming. I mean, he will talk about that very specifically. So if I would become well versed in the work of John Bradshaw. If you don't like to read, you can watch their PBS specials. But there's a lot of work in this area, specifically on this. And I would definitely say, realize that there are other people that you can attract, not only for you, but for your son, to undo this triangulation and this sort of power vacuum. In other words, instill it where there can be other outlets, especially the big brother, because if he doesn't stop, this, when you have a reckless, because the narcissist relationship can be like an addiction, and then they can get very addicted to anger and acting out, just like victims can get very addicted to feeling victimized. I want down, and so, and then they have a difficulty breaking this cycle of feeling that it's okay for them to go forward, but they need to have that transition where they're not missing a lot of steps. So we have some remedial work to do. Just like when people need to heal, you have remedial work that needs to be done. Meaning you are retooling and re-educating and recrossing those bridges and those developmental stages that got missed early on. Particularly that of autonomy and industry, and being able to contribute into social settings that aren't negative or requiring intervention from law professionals, to deal with. So we really want to understand and really instill respect here, and realize that challenging the child, as much as you might want to call them out, or just like some people want to call a narcissist out, when people are wounded, this has the opposite direction. It just amplifies. So it's kind of like the child who is wounded has a stigma, just like a victim who has been victimized might feel that they have a stigma or a disorder or an abnormality or social anxiety and discomfort. So there has to be this gentle, slow, gradual introduction of positive role models. In other words, discovery in different tones. We're not coming at things the same way. In other words, you can change, and then the teenager will also sense change. So the change can also begin within. So realizing, and there's just so much to this, and I'm not quite sure what all has been tried, but realize that when you realize that there has to be a certain amount of allowing here, and not to be a counterforce to the acting out. In other words, how can we take this so that then you can have sort of these, hey, I would like to try this new game, and then you can begin to create a different sort of connection. But it might be so tender right now that there's nothing you can do. Any attempt is just met with more and more adverse, and then they go further away. So slowly using other tools to do some of the sort of learning and education and mentorship. In other words, things like magazines, books, pictures, things that you can put, other things that they can develop, like learning to cook, learning to earn a little money, other little things where they feel effective, and then they're earning points towards something. Even in, the household, repairing things, things that a boy can feel proud about. I think a lot of boys feel proud if they can have a bike, and they can take care of it, or they can have an engine that they can work on. So what, thing could they be an outlet? So for example, there might be people who love to work on a car in a garage, or a car here, or a radio. So where can they sort of get lost in? Where can they get lost in the sauce? That is going to be the discovery. And then the change will come from within you as the parent to start asking completely different questions. Like if you had all the money in the world, what would you really want to do with it? Or if you could live anywhere, where would it be? Or if you could, drive any